In today's episode of Vegan Visibility, you're going to find out how one man is taking the meat industry by storm. And actually, it's the unmeat meat industry. Stick around and you're in for a great treat.
Welcome to the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show, where your host, Kathleen Gage, shines the spotlight on vegan and plant-based businesses and entrepreneurs from all walks of life committed to cruelty-free eating, healthy lifestyles, animal compassion, and the environment. Enjoy the show.
Well, Paul, it is great to have you here. And I'm curious, with your company, the Better Meat Company, it sounds like it's a meat company, but it's not. So tell us about the Better Meat Company, when you started it, and what it is.
Sure. Well, Kathleen, first, great to be with you. I'm grateful for all you're doing to advance the animal-friendly and plant-based space. So first, let me say thank you. Second, we are a meat company in some senses because I don't necessarily think that meat needs to come from the flesh of a once living animal's body. So I think in the same way that a lot of the times, let's just take like light as an example. People, they switch their light switch. They just want light, right? They're not concerned about whether it's coming from fossil fuels or from renewable energy. They just want the experience of having a lit room. Similarly, when people eat meat, I think it's the experience of meat that they want. It's not necessarily they want an animal to have been raised and slaughtered for it. In fact, many people would probably prefer that not to happen. But people like eating meat, or at least a lot of people do. And so what we at the Better Meat Co. are doing is trying to provide a way to enjoy that meat type experience without having to raise and slaughter animals in the process. So we are an ingredients company. We are not a company like Beyond Meat or Impossible Foods, where they have a branded company where you can go out and find the brand in the supermarket or on a restaurant menu. We are a business-to-business ingredients company selling to the makers of plant-based meats and to even animal-based companies so that they can reduce their own footprint on animals and the planet too.
So what gave you the idea, Paul, to actually start this business? What was the catalyst for that?
A long-standing concern for the treatment of animals and for climate change and for saving humanity from ourselves. So it's no longer any secret, Kathleen, you know this better than anybody, but we're just not going in the right direction right now. The planet is not getting any bigger. Humanity's footprint is on the planet is getting bigger, but the planet isn't getting any bigger. And we have nearly 8 billion of us walking around now. And in 30 years, we're going to have 10 billion of us, presuming there's no catastrophe between now and then. But we don't have more land to farm. We don't have more fish in the ocean. We're not going to be farming the moon. We're not going to be farming Mars. We have one planet, and we are currently destroying it. And a big reason that we're destroying it is because human beings crave and have almost like an insatiable appetite for meat. Meat demand is rising, not falling. People who are in the plant-based world like you and I, Kathleen, we live in this echo chamber, and we think that, oh, well, look at the explosion of plant-based meat. Everybody's moving in the right direction. But it's just helpful to just remember a dose of reality. Meat demand is going up, not down. It's going up in the United States, it's going up in Europe, it's going up in China and India and Brazil and Mexico and all the places it's going to matter the most in the future. Meat consumption is going up on a per person basis, not merely because population is growing, but also on a per person basis. Meat demand is going up, not down. And yes, again, that's true here in the United States. And so my concern is that awareness is not sufficient. Just telling people about the problems of factory farming and giving them facts is just not sufficient to change their behavior. Maybe for some people it is, but for most people, awareness and facts just are not sufficient. So if you think about what ended other animal exploitative industries, so go back, let's say 150 years when we were all lighting our homes with whale oil, the reason we stopped whaling, which is a huge part of the economy, was not because people cared about whales. It is because kerosene was invented, and that was a cleaner, cheaper way to light our homes, and that freed whales from harpoons. Similarly, we exploited horses for millennia for their labor under the threat of whipping them, and we didn't stop whipping horses because we were concerned about horses. We stopped because the car was invented. And so I wanted to create a company that could help render obsolete a very troubling practice of factory farming in the same way that other technologies have rendered other past animal exploitative industries obsolete as well.
That is such an interesting perspective and a really valuable point of view, because a lot of people within the vegan and plant-based movement, they think, okay, everybody should just give up meat and, save the planet, save the animals. And yet what you're saying is that's not realistic. So let's meet people where they're at. And now, it's interesting when you say that meat consumption is up, because I sometimes do live in my little bubble of the plant-based world. And last evening I went to a get together for a friend's birthday party, and there was a message that went out to all the people who were attending. Which would you prefer, vegan sausages or meat sausages? And 95% of the people said meat sausages. And I felt my heart hurt over that, because I thought, do you have any idea? And I did some research on how sausage is processed. And I thought, if you only knew, but they don't know in many cases. And even if they do, they're not willing to give it up. So having a good substitute is a great plan. Now, when you do B2B, how do you find the companies that you partner with, that you work with? What's your marketing strategy behind all that?
I'm eager to answer your question, Kathleen, but I just have to comment on your story because it is so illustrative of reality. I mean, look, let me just state for the record, I'm vegan. I've been vegan for nearly 30 years. My wife is a vegan cookbook author. I would be thrilled for more people to see the world the way that I do. But sadly, that is not the case. I would also love world peace. Don't think that's happening anytime soon. So, we just have to play the cards as they're dealt. And the reality is that most people are going to eat as much meat as they can afford. It's just something that humans seem to want to do. When nations start escaping out of poverty and they start having a middle class, like in China and India, where they have expanding middle classes right now, one of the very first things that people do when they start getting more money in their pocket is eating more meat. Even in a country like India, where there's a history of vegetarianism, you have huge numbers of Indians abandoning that. Even in the United States, sadly, the polling shows that the recidivism rate for vegetarians and vegans is very high. Upwards of 90% of people who go vegan or vegetarian tend to stop at some point doing it. So, we're facing like really, really high desire for a meat type experience. However, it doesn't mean that we need to raise animals for that experience. Just in the same way that we want to light our homes and we want to travel around the world, we don't care whether we're exploiting whales and horses to do that. We used to, for writing, we used to use the quills from geese and ducks and so on. And we stopped because we cared about them. We stopped because fountain pens were invented. So we need to invent technologies that are superior to the types of animal exploitative industries that we have today if we really want to help animals. Now, to answer your question directly, Kathleen, and so I apologize for taking that turn there.
No, that's actually, I like the turns in the road that you're taking. So
Okay, good. Okay, so now to answer your question, during the gold rush in 1848, most people who rushed to California to find gold never made anything. But who was really successful was the people who were selling the shovels and the pickaxes. And that's what a B2B strategy is like. We're not trying to create the next big brand. What we at the Better Meat Co. are doing are trying to create next generation ingredients that can make really phenomenal, really succulent, fantastic, either meat analogs or even meat enhancers. So as an example, imagine if at your party, while only 5% of people wanted the vegan sausage, well, what if without saying anything, they made the conventional sausage that people were overwhelmingly requesting 50% plant-based, and they just gave it to people, right? You couldn't tell the difference, but they just gave it to them. That way you'd have a 50% reduction of pork consumption there rather than only a 5%. So that's the example of what you can do with ingredients when you blend them into meat. You can actually have really big reductions in meat demand without having to change people's behavior. However, what we do is we utilize fermentation. And so if you think about plant-based meat today, nearly all plant-based meat is made out of one of three crops: peas, wheat, or soy, or maybe a combination of one of those, or one or two of those three. And what we're doing is using fermentation to make a fourth category of plant-based meat alternative that is much meatier. And as you can see behind me, if you're watching this on video, we're using fungi to do that. And so we use fungi to run a special type of fermentation that within hours creates extremely meat-like products. And so we partner with companies both in the meat industry and the plant-based meat industry to help them create meatier experiences that don't involve animals. And that is the real benefit of using the Better Meat Co.'s products, is that you can create a much meatier experience with a much more natural, less processed whole food that is coming from fermentation, as opposed to coming from isolates and extrudates that are utilized in conventional plant protein processing.
Right, right. Well, the question that I think a lot of people have, and I want to remind everybody, this is Kathleen Gage with Vegan Visibility, and I'm talking with Paul Shapiro of the Better Meat Co., and some people call it the Better Meat Company. And when people choose to go with your company, or companies that have meat replacements, if you will, how healthy is it? Because that's a big issue for a lot of people, that they're realizing that meat from animals is not necessarily healthy. It's not healthy at all. So what's the level of healthy food that you're producing?
Sure. Well, just to back up, let's just point out that pretty much all plant-based meat is going to be healthier than the conventional animal-based meat. It's certainly healthier for animals, but it also is healthier for the consumer. And so let's just start from basics. All of the plant-based meats have zero cholesterol, because cholesterol is only found in animal products. There's no cholesterol in the plant kingdom. It's only found in animal products. No meat has any fiber at all. Animals don't make fiber in their bodies because we have skeletons. Skeletons hold our bodies up, but plants don't have skeletons. They need to be held up, and they use fiber to hold themselves up. So, if you are looking for fiber, you must look in the plant kingdom, not in the animal kingdom. So with plant-based meat, you're off the bat not getting the cholesterol. You're probably getting more fiber. And generally speaking, you're going to be getting less saturated fat. You're going to be getting other nutrients that you want. So, even if these foods are not necessarily health foods per se, compared to what they are replacing, I think that they're going to be healthier. So it's not to say that somebody who walks into Burger King and gets an Impossible Whopper is getting something that's as good as a kale salad. That's not true. But is it better than a conventional Whopper? Yeah, it is. Now, to answer your question directly about the Better Meat Co., Kathleen, it is helpful to recognize that plant proteins are typically isolated. So, if you were going to, let's say, make pea protein to make a Beyond Burger, what you do is you got to grow a field of peas, harvest that field, and mill it into a flour. That pea flour is about 20% protein, so not that high compared to what they need. So they remove the fiber, they remove the fat, so that you get a very concentrated amount of protein, like maybe 70%. And then you have a pea protein powder that doesn't have the texture of meat. So you have to run it through a process known as extrusion, which basically heats it up to a really high temperature, and that causes it to change its molecular structure, creating a much more stringy meat-like texture from that plant protein isolate. What we're doing at the Better Meat Co. is using fermentation to create a whole food. We don't have to remove the fiber or the fat. We already have a naturally high protein food. In fact, just naturally, straight out of the fermenter, once we squeeze some of the water out of it, you're looking at a product that on a dry weight basis has about 45% protein. So it is really high in protein. It also is high in iron. In fact, it's higher in iron than beef. It's got more protein than eggs, more potassium than bananas, and it is both high fiber, and it has naturally occurring vitamin B12 in it. As any vegan knows, generally vegans should be supplementing with B12 because it's not found in the plant kingdom. But because we're not making this out of plants, we're using microbial fermentation to do this. Our product naturally contains vitamin B12 despite being totally animal free. So it really is a true superfood. We call it rhiza, that is Latin for root. And rhiza is a product of fermentation that we offer as an ingredient to plant-based meat companies who want a meatier experience for their consumers.
Nice. So in your marketing, because Vegan Visibility is all about vegan companies getting visibility, in addition to getting on podcast shows, because I know that you do that, what are some other ways that companies find out about your company?
Yeah, great question. So, talking with you, Kathleen, is a great way to do it since you have a big audience and people are fans of yours, appropriately so. However, in addition to talking with you, what we're also doing is marketing ourselves directly to the major food players, and that's in the plant-based and the animal-based industries. So yes, we like to tout what we're doing in the media, but we also want to make the case directly to the major food users. The food industry has been considered by many to be the problem when it comes to climate change and animal welfare concerns and so on. And we want to invite these folks to be the solution, to actually reduce their footprint on the planet and on animals, to actually produce healthier products. And so what we do is essentially look at who are the people in charge of making decisions at these big food companies and contact them and offer them a better way. We don't want to shame anybody. We're not trying to make anybody feel bad. What we're trying to do is offer a helping hand to help them achieve their sustainability goals and make even better products. The reason we're called the Better Meat Co. is because we help our customers make better meat. That is what we do.
Wonderful. And I do have an idea for one of your marketing strategies, since you have a beautiful, beautiful dog. I think you ought to do dog clothing with the Better Meat Co. on it, and save an animal, the Better Meat Co. And, because I love your dog. We actually had a red nose, as you know, and he passed away. But, I'm such an advocate of pets and, taking really good care of our animals. But I think you have a clothing line in your future. So
I love it.
In closing, what are your final thoughts for people as they make decisions around what they eat and about saving the animals, saving the planet? What are your final thoughts for people?
Right. Briefly before the final thoughts, I just have to say my wife has alleged that our dog, whose name is Eddie, has more clothing than I do. And I believe that's probably true. So he already has a large line of clothing, but shamefully, he has no Better Meat Co. clothing. So we're going to have to rectify that injustice, Kathleen. You are the progenitor of this idea. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. All right. Now, and if you want to check out Eddie, he's on Instagram at Eddie the Pity. That's EDDIE thepity.com, or it's not no.com. Sorry, that's how bad I am on social media. He's on Instagram at Eddie the Pity. So anyway, listen, to answer your question, Kathleen, there is a wide open field right now in the alternative protein space. If you want to try your hand at entrepreneurship, or if you want to try your hand at joining a socially conscious company, this is the space to be in. It's very hot. There's a lot of investor interest in it right now, and you can really make a dent by solving one of the biggest problems that is facing humanity, which is our seeming addiction to raising animals for food. We can do better. We can reduce our reliance on animals, and it's going to take a lot of people. You may think, oh, well, there's already Beyond and Impossible and Morningstar. What more could I contribute? Well, these companies, all of them put together, all of the plant-based meat together, is still less than 1% of the total meat market. There's room in the world for McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's, even though they're all just selling basically fast food burgers and fries. And at the same time, there's room for lots of companies in the alternative protein space. So I hope that you, the listener, will get involved in this space, either as an entrepreneur, or maybe you'll be an early employee, or maybe you'll become an investor in some of these companies, but help us solve this problem. We can't keep going the direction that we're going in. We've got to do better, and that means reducing our reliance on animals for food.
Absolutely. And you're right about people becoming investors, because we've invested in some of the IPOs that have happened recently, the Oatly and Beyond Meat, when they went public, so there are ways that people can get involved. So Paul, I really appreciate that. And I want to remind people that you've been listening to Kathleen Gage of Vegan Visibility with Paul Shapiro of the Better Meat Co. Visit the Better Meat Co. and we'll put all the links down below so that you can access not only the website, but you can find out more about, now what's your pitty's name again?
Eddie.
Eddie the Pity. Okay. Yeah. Beautiful blue nose. And that's when I fell in love with you, Paul. I thought, okay, I have to have this man on my show. So thank you very much. And I want to remind everybody, go out and do what's right for the environment, for the animals, and for your health. Have a great day.
You've been listening to the Vegan Visibility Podcast Show. Be sure to subscribe to get notified when the next episode is live. And we always appreciate reviews. Join us next time for more inspiration, education, and motivation to build your business one cruelty-free and healthy person at a time.